You could spend 20 minutes on a drawing, post it online, and get a mountain of praise. Or you could spend months or even years working on an indie game, release it, and get ripped apart in the reviews. That's just the nature of the industry. Every frame of an indie game is an expression of these indie developers.
Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to another interview for the section called Indie Neighbor. I'm sitting here with Sherier. He is the creator of an indie game named Gunwire. Um, I'm looking at Gunwire. It looks really cool, very optimized, man, tons of stuff on the screen. But one thing I want to say about this game is when you look at the trailer, when you look at things, you gotta go full screen because the charm is really there when you see the details of pixel art. Go ahead, Sherier. Introduce
Yeah.
yourself. Sorry.
Yeah. So my well, let's say name online is Sherier, and I've been kind of building indie games for a couple of years now. But this particular project, Gunwire, that's more of a young project that I started. I think in August last year, maybe July. Uh, not really sure anymore, but it's been a fun little project at the beginning. I was just trying to make a web game with kind of very kind of low friction, easy to access. You just boot it up, you select your weapon, you shoot enemies, you have fun. That was kind of the leading beginning idea, and over these months, I've been working on expanding that into something kind of say more exciting and just building on this initial a little idea into a game that would be kind of like adrenaline pumping, dodging a lot of things, shooting a lot of things, reacting to what's happening in the environment, that sort of stuff.
Cool. Yeah. So when I look at it, definitely got feeling of these, early arcade games. The ones that are really fun, the ones you'd actually go to the arcade and put quarters in, and
Yeah,
you're driving around a little tank. You got, but the thing that I see with yours is that I'm seeing enemies coming from all directions. It looks like it's running buttery smooth. Um, tell me anything that you want the players to know about this, the controls, things that you think might be difficult. But who is this character that we start out as, and who are these enemies that we're fighting?
that's a very good question. I'm working most of this out myself. I've focused a lot on mechanics in this game, but kind of an inspiration for the theme in the background, I think, would be I play a lot of Warframe here and now. It's a very good shooter game, a third person, and I kind of like the idea of the survival missions where you're the guy who's been dropped into the fray, fighting all of the enemies while there's someone else kind of like robbing the base of its resources. And I'm thinking I'm gonna definitely give it this sort of a vibe where, because it's a game and at the end of which you have to die. You're gonna finish. Eventually you always get overrun by all of these robots because you're fighting the robot overlords effectively. So it's a game about going out with a blast.
Yeah.
You're not gonna survive it, but you're gonna get a hell of a fight.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So you're dropped in, you're fighting, enemies are swarming. You can fight them off, as much as possible. Eventually, they're going. It's difficulty and swarms are going to build up to the point where it's just
Yeah.
like going to be
Yeah,
game over.
it's meant to eventually overrun you. Currently, it's just literally the number of enemies that overrun you. I will definitely have like boss fights in it,
Mm.
and I really like back from my World of Warcraft days. You got your red zone with the damage. You have to dodge it. You have frames of invincibility on the boss, and a bunch of mechanics where you have to kind of follow some kind of rhythm or some kind of pattern and stay just.
Oh,
But stuff like that really fascinates me. I like
cool.
these kind of boss fights where you're really kind of directed by the game to do things, and you cannot just overpower it just by sheer force. You have to kind of play by the rules.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. It's great game design.
but
I'm right there with you. Like a good learning curve.
yeah.
Yeah, I recently beat the game Sekiro for the second time through, and
Oh,
I feel like when you mention that, that's what comes to mind. Just like learn your
yeah.
opponent, learn their combos, learn their attacks. Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing that I'm not sure if Sekiro is exactly like Dark Souls in that regard, but I was just recently trying to get back into some of the Dark Souls titles, and I noticed it's really very heavily skill based because you have to learn the patterns without kind of any further indication. What I like to make things slightly easier because I like when like there's an actual red warning area on the ground. I like when there's you kind of get told by the game kind of where the problems are going to be. I think recently I've been playing a bit more Path of Exile, and I kind of like that. There's always a circle on the ground. You always know where the danger is coming from. So that's the kind of stuff.
Totally.
That I like about these fights.
I'm a huge Overwatch player as well, and there's always when the ultimates are coming, they always give you like a voice attack. You always see on the ground where the attacks are going to come. Blizzard's really good at doing that as well.
Heroes of the Storm for me,
Oh, you play Heroes? I play Heroes too. Cool, man.
We're probably the last two players.
Yeah, we might be. You're the first guy to like when I mentioned the name of it recently who knows what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
you mentioned the graphics and how Gunwire has good graphics. I have to come clean. The graphics are not mine. It's a purchased asset pack. Although I have to say I'm very happy with that asset pack. The guy who makes these is really he really knows his stuff. So I have to admit that a lot of the kind of vibe of the game has been driven by that pack. Initially, I wasn't even entirely sure if I was gonna do a game when you're fighting aliens or a game when you fight robots. From my perspective, it wasn't really that crucial at that point. So whatever I can get my hands on that would really look good, I'll just roll with the punches and see what I can get out of it. And I really like when it ended up at this point.
Cool. Just not to cut you off, more like a segue because I like to talk about the game and then I like to talk about you and dive deeper into you. So that's a good segue. My next question would be like, are you an artist? Are you a software? Are you a programmer? Are you this and that?
So, I know by education, I'm a philosopher.
Interesting. Super interesting.
Extremely useful. And then by profession, I'm a software test engineer. So I mostly test software, test programs, mostly telephony these days. Which is very technical, but doesn't really have much in terms of game development. And my game development journey kind of happened alongside the software testing while I was really trying to learn how to code. And I was thinking, how on earth do I learn? Not really, just need some kind of a project probably to learn how to code properly with some motivation. And it wasn't Gunwire that came out of that. It was a much earlier project of mine, which was Dungeon-like, a kind of a proper traditional roguelike, grid-based, turn-based,
Did you launch that one on itch.io or where can people have seen
that? Yeah, so that's that's been on itch.io for years now. I think I stopped working on it in 2019, and it's been there since, and it still sometimes even gets some downloads, some views without any kind of marketing on my end. The game just kind of lives on, although it's not super popular by no means. But it's good to see that people come across it from time to time and still download my training pet project in a way. It still exists there, and in a way, the fact that it still exists there was a bit of an inspiration for Gunwire itself, because in the meantime, let's say Dungeon-like eventually died a death of me burning out and realizing that game of that kind of size just outgrew my capability of maintaining and expanding it further. It just got very, very large. I was trying to do crazy stuff in there, and that taught me a lot about scoping. Then I made a horrible mistake of not backing up my stuff for a couple of, let's say, weeks. And when my old laptop fried and my hard drive fried, I unfortunately was left with a couple of weeks of work that were never committed properly. It was a very, very big lesson in version control. And that was the day when I was like, well, I've had enough. Let's drop it for now. Then I started working on a mobile game instead, which also had its ups and downs, no longer with source control. But let's say that after working with that title, I kind of learned that mobile games are not exactly my forte. But that was a while later. And then I looked back saying, well, on itch.io, I still have this dungeon-like, this roguelike. It's still there. Nothing happened to it. It's thriving. I don't have to worry about Android API updates or anything like that. Like you have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
unlock,
yeah.
you have to
No,
really set
yeah.
up.
It's just awesome. There's a
Yeah,
dedicated
it's a
like
brilliant platform.
the people that are willing to play the games are these cool, guys that seek out indie stuff and all the headaches of mobile, all their APIs, both Android and iOS is such a headache.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so
And when the
I totally
monetization
understand.
scheme, yeah, when the monetization laws change in some country and you have to look at whatever terms of service and update a bunch of stuff, it's a bit of a pain. So I looked at it. I was like, why wouldn't I just go back to what I know works well, and publish a game on itch as I did with the previous one? But this time, just don't go overkill on the scope and kind of know my strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so so that's why Gunwire is a top-down shooter and not like grand strategy. It's meant to be a game that's fundamentally mechanically rather simple. But what I want to get out of it eventually is, I want it to be a title which has a lot of interesting synergistic mechanics. So it's a horde shooter, of course, but it's not going to be, let's say, a Vampire Survivors clone or anything like that. It's going to be always a game where the player skill is very, very important. Player agency is very important. So, even currently, you said to say how to play the game and kind of input, that kind of stuff. It's primarily at the moment the game is playable on keyboard, and you just move with WSAD. You have your dash under your space bar, and then with mouse you control your aim. You can, at the moment on the official version, you can throw a grenade with right mouse button, and you can of course shoot with left mouse button. That's pretty much it. So it's movement, dash, grenade, shooting, and aim. Since I've decided that, well, the game should probably support gamepad or controllers,
yeah.
I have moved a little bit away from the grenade, because a grenade that you pinpoint on the screen with a mouse is great, but with a controller, you don't really have that freedom of kind of movement of the cursor. So I've backtracked on the grenade. Now it's a rocket launcher. Totally different thing.
Yeah.
But that drives creativity as well. When I have a rocket launcher, it's a game of perks. You progress through the waves of enemies. You get stronger. So I figured, okay, if I have a rocket launcher, let's do Quake 3 Arena. Let's do rocket jump, right? So I added a perk which allows you to dash in the opposite direction every time you shoot the rocket. So it's an optional perk, and it effectively gives you a free dash. And if you're building your entire character around dashes, which you could do with another perk, it's called Ride the Lightning. That's Metallica. But Ride the Lightning is a perk that makes your dash deal end damage to enemies, and if you level it up, it actually even creates like a lightning explosion at the end. So with that, you want to have as many dashes as possible. So a decision of input led to a change in some of the design, which gave me a perk which builds into an existing mechanic.
Cool.
So it's interesting how these things feed into one another.
Yeah, yeah.
In the
Cool. Let me summarize. You mentioned off there that you're Polish, and you now live in the UK.
Yeah.
You studied philosophy. You
I have.
work as kind of gameplay tester. That led.
No. So my actual occupation is just normal software testing. Doesn't
Software
actually have to
testing.
do
Yeah.
anything with games. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, if it's a job, whether it's games or something else, it all feels the same at this point to me. Like
Fair
I
enough.
want to make my own games. You're making your own games. Whatever allows us to make our own games is cool.
Yeah, the job is the job, so that we can do what we want in our free time.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, so now you're a software tester. You now have a certain amount of confidence with code. What kind of languages do you write code, or how do you do code?
It depends what the task is. If I have to, I'll touch JavaScript, but rather unwillingly.
Yeah.
Most of the code I write is Unity, is C#.
C#. Yeah.
The dungeon-like roguelike game I built before was also C#, but in monogame, so a fairly lower level framework. At work, I sometimes write Java. That's probably the primary language I use at work. But back in the day, I did some PHP as well, a couple of years back. So it's at a certain point in your kind of development journey of writing code, you kind of just flip between them. They don't seem that different anymore.
Yeah.
Especially the C-based languages, they really translate into one another. And C# and Java, same thing
Well,
for the most part.
when you mentioned that you're software testing, when I was listening, I was like, that didn't that wasn't your introduction to code, but apparently, because you studied philosophy, but at some point you learned code for the testing, I imagine a little bit, and then that evolved into
Yeah.
gameplay programming. Um, and a lot of people are really intimidated by code. So that's why I'm kind of asking this, because I think, the viewers could be interested that, um, did you have frustrations with code? A lot of people are like, I'm not a code guy, just I don't want to do it. You seem
Oh,
to enjoy
so
it, maybe.
absolutely. You know what? It's even better than that. So before I studied philosophy, I was in high school and I
Yeah.
was thinking to go, study informatics and learn how to code.
Mhm.
And there was this guy who was meant to tutor me in order for me to be able to, pass the exams and go to study computer science. And he was trying to explain to me some sorting algorithms with some pivot in there.
Yeah.
And I already had a little bit of that curiosity that I later developed at philosophy.
Yeah.
Before that, I was like, all right, how does it really work? And he tried to explain it to me. And the more he tried to explain it to me, the less he understood how it worked. So he went home. He came back a couple of days later. Was like, I got it now. I'll be able to explain the sorting to you. He had 3 attempts at 3 different days, and then I never heard from him again because he gave up. And he
Yeah.
was, I think, so embarrassed that he decided, I'm not gonna explain that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's when I realized, okay, I'm not cut out to do this. I cannot even understand a sorting algorithm.
Yeah.
When can I even build any kind of code? And I left it. And that's when I went to do philosophy, where I started doing some logic, and that sort of led to another thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I pretty much believe that I was not cut out for this work ever, and I lost a lot of confidence in terms of technology.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
And then exactly, and then through the philosophy studies, I got interested in philosophy of science. That led me to studying physics
Mhm.
on the side while doing beginning my PhD for philosophy. I was also doing physics, kind of like undergrad, and they had a computer science course in there embedded into the thing. And I just was like, oh no, it's going to be coding. I'm going to mess it up again.
Yeah.
But you know what? After that philosophy, after that logic, after all this, I sat down and I just nailed every single exercise. And I was, how does that work? And I realized that there was never a problem with me as not understanding code. It's just that I needed a certain approach.
Yeah.
And once that locked in,
Yeah.
so you never know. You never know what you
Yeah,
are capable of.
it's inspiring, like, and I totally agree. Like, uh, it's a bummer that people, I feel like they had the wrong approach and then they cut themselves off entirely,
Yeah.
not realizing that, like, you just needed the right introduction. And I love code, and I studied art, and I love code, and I totally don't feel intimidated by it at all anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but I just feel like I had the right introduction to it as well, and um, I probably would have felt exactly the same way you did early on if
Yeah.
I'm glad I wouldn't put up a wall and go, I don't want to touch it. Like, don't even, I don't want to go there.
Yeah,
So
I don't feel sad that I didn't give myself that chance to jump back into it. That I gave up after the tutor could not teach me.
yeah,
The problem was, very formal mathematics. I was missing some stuff. But the truth was, I had a lot of curiosity that, this wasn't like a professional tutor. This was a university guy himself who was just trying to teach others, and I had this kind of curiosity which was a bit too much.
yeah,
Uh, but I couldn't dig it also myself. I couldn't dig to the bottom of the problem myself to explain it to myself. Philosophy is what taught me how to do that.
yeah.
So that really
I,
unlocked a lot.
I mean, I find this philosophy background to be really interesting and unique to you, and I'd imagine, Uh, I think that you're really jazzed on arcade style gameplay mechanics right now, but do you have any dreams of doing a really in-depth philosophical game? Like something, I don't know what that would look like, but
Don't know either, but
yeah,
maybe one day. The thing is, I think philosophical things would have to probably be heavily narrative driven, heavily story driven. That would usually be, a game like Soma. That's a
yeah,
proper game that it makes you think
interesting.
what is human
Yeah, I loved that
consciousness.
one. I played
Exactly.
that one as well.
Uh, but I usually notice that for myself when I play games, that's not really what I'm looking for in them. I'm looking for kind of the dopamine shots. Um, so that's what I kind of steer towards
Yeah,
myself when I play games, or even when I make one.
yeah,
Although a big roguelike was not particularly dopamine or adrenaline. It was mostly like incremental upgrades. But yeah, so philosophy definitely helps with a lot of stuff. It's the kind of approach that you get where you start seeing patterns in things that may be otherwise difficult to miss, or you push yourself to understand things on a more kind of a fundamental level, and you can, dissect them into pieces.
Yeah.
It also depends, what kind of philosophy someone is into. I was into analytical philosophy, so it's quite, quite logical. It's less about
lends
dreaming
itself
about meaning
well
of
to
life.
programming. Yeah.
Oh, insanely.
Yeah.
I often say that if someone has a problem with like object-oriented programming, they should try and read Aristotle, because there is just like a one-to-one between Aristotle's metaphysics and what classes and abstract classes and what I want to say static properties are. Like that's just, you can literally understand it by by reading metaphysics. I'm not saying it's a faster way, but it is a way.
Yeah. That's great for the viewers to know. I mean, someone's gonna go study Aristotle right now, I think, at some point, based on you saying that.
I wouldn't advise people to study Aristotle in order to learn programming, but I would say if you already know Aristotle, programming is not going to be too difficult.
Yeah. Cool. I think I'd like to do a little bit of, dive into you as a person a little bit. Then I like to wrap things up a little bit with any final thoughts. One thing is that have you had any play testing with your game yet? Had anyone sit down with it? Any confusion that you've noticed from play testers that you want to tell anybody?
Absolutely. So, well, would it be confusion? Well, there's always UI elements that you can work on, or that I can work on. Making things clearer, and I always experiment with that. Yeah, I've had, in terms of who played it, there's been a couple of friends that played it, but at the same time, it's a free game, web game on itch.io. Anyone can just pick it up and play. So I've posted some posts on Reddit, and I had some feedback, predominantly feedback, not really about people getting confused, but them having great ideas of what could go in the game.
Yeah.
So people get really excited about that kind of stuff, and I get excited about it as well, because I like ingesting ideas from others and seeing what can be done. There is a bit of creativity in me, but I really like having like the community to submit their own suggestions, maybe even criticize something. Maybe I'm going in a direction that doesn't make sense in that particular aspect. It's kind of a work in progress, an evolving creature, this game.
Yeah.
But I think like an interesting part that I noticed recently is that both my fiance, she was playing the game. It's not really exactly her thing. She likes things that are a bit more chill. But I noticed that she was really trying to stay at the edges of the screen. She had this impression that it's a safe zone.
Yeah.
Which, as you probably can imagine, is the least safe zone, because that's where the enemies spawn.
Exactly.
But you're there. And then I was thinking, well, she hasn't played stuff like that, so I'm gonna, this is just the genre. That's how it works. But then I had a friend of mine who had a very similar observation, and he knew that he could express it and said, you know what, most of the screen area is not really a no-go zone, because I cannot be in the center where all the enemies sort of naturally gather as you dodge them, but I also cannot be at the edges. And this is another thing that drives some kind of solution. So something I have in the pipeline is to actually wall off the entire outline of the stage, create some gates that the enemies will be spawning through. And then I could actually visually control sort of the flow of enemies, because I'll be opening different numbers of gates to suggest to the player, oh, there is going to be a lot of enemies now. But I'm also big on kind of player agency in the game. I don't like having too much RNG. So players could also potentially open the gates themselves optionally and make the game more difficult for themselves, unlock a challenge, get more enemies in, get a higher score. That's actually a big thing I didn't mention. A thing that's currently built already in the dev build is a whole leaderboard system. So the game will be pretty much high score driven. You can show yourself off to others, and that's already fully built. It's not published, but it works. I hope. And about kind of this kind of player agency stuff and avoiding too much RNG. The game that's a heavy inspiration is Crimson Land. I'm not sure if you might have heard about it. It's 20 years old.
Yeah.
It's a proper oldie. But the thing about Crimson Land that always kind of annoyed me in the end game is that eventually you just kind of surf from one bonus to another. It's essentially a game like mine where you have a top-down shooter, you shoot enemies, but sometimes they drop a bonus, increase fire rate, give you piercing bullets, give you invulnerability.
Yeah.
And eventually the game devolves into you just jumping between these. And the moment these bonuses just don't happen to spawn, you're done.
Yeah.
So it becomes pretty much just a one-armed bandit. If you get the bonuses, good luck. If you don't, bad luck.
Yeah.
So what I've done in Gunwire to kind of combat that is that the bonuses come at the moment at a 30-second interval. There's a platform that comes up and you get 3 to choose from. So you're not really bound by the luck of do they happen or not. They will always appear in a certain interval. You get to choose from a pool. It's not all of them, of course. There's more than 3 in the game, but you have a very high chance of getting what you're likely gonna need.
Yeah.
And you know exactly when they're gonna spawn, although I should do a better job showing on the UI some kind of a timer for that. But that's going to be the next version. Cool. But this is the kind of way I'm thinking about it. I'm removing some of the RNG, giving the player a bit more agency, a bit more decisive, kind of things that allow player to make very informed decisions of what I do next, what I can plan for, how I can make things interact with each other. That's the sort of what I want to go with it.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, sounds great. I think we'll wrap it up here.
Right.
This has been a really inspiring talk with Sherier. Did I say that right again?
Sherier.
And,
yeah,
that's awesome. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you, guys.